So a question for everyone. Why do you feel that animation is an important tool for African storytellers?
Budget. I know for me, I come from a live action background, and I think we always have ambitious ideas, different worlds you want to build, sci-fi, fantasy, all of these types of things. And as expensive as animation is, once you get to that genre of things, it's really difficult to be as creatively free as you are in animation. And I think, as you'll see in Kizazi Moto, there's a lot of, in our stories, there's a lot of spirituality, a lot of folklore, a lot of mythology, a lot of this kind of magical realism that is a thing that we love to explore as Africans. And I think animation is the best medium to really do it justice. So I think it's that. It's like the scope of the kind of stories you can tell are limitless, as opposed to live action where you always have to be quite practical in terms of what you're going to put on the screen. And I just love animation. It's cool.
Yeah, exactly what Isaac said. Yes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's untapped stories and untapped visuals of how we can tell those stories, and this is just the beginning,
Yeah, I would say probably accessibility. It's a more embracing genre or medium that can really connect with people from a very young age to a very old age. So I would definitely say accessibility.
Oh, and can I just say one more thing? I think also animation is really good for children. And I really think that if we can get kids watching African content from the time that they kind of, 6, 7 going up, it's a habit that they'll continue. They won't have this kind of bias that a lot of people grow up with, where you just didn't see a thing and so you're not checking it out. I think animation can really onboard, particularly African kids, but kids around the world, to really start embracing and enjoying African content, and then hopefully carry that through to the rest of their lives, whether it's live action or animation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Peter, why was Kizazi Moto a project that you wanted to be involved in?
Yeah, I got excited about the African animation community back in 2019 when I was lucky enough to be invited to the Cape Town Animation Festival, and I just felt I was in the middle of this huge explosion of creativity and optimism and excitement, and I wanted the rest of the world to experience that. So when I was contacted, close to a year later by the Triggerfish Studio about being a part of Kizazi Moto, which they were just starting to explore with Disney Plus, it was for me, it was a no-brainer. There's so much talent here. The people are all great. Everyone who participated in this anthology, they're just wonderful people, and the chance to be able to help introduce them to the world is a huge privilege.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Isaac, let's talk about Hatima. What sort of themes were you interested in exploring in the film?
There's a few of them, but I think the biggest one was around kind of conflict, and especially, we were asked to come up with a story of Africa's future. It's meant to be optimistic, but I don't think for us, we didn't want to talk about the future without talking about today's issues, and I think we live in a continent where there's a lot of conflict. I think there's more conflict happening on the continent than anywhere else in the world combined, and in South Africa, we obviously dealt with xenophobic violence and all of that kind of stuff. So we wanted to create a film that really spoke to that and was hopeful in the context of what that is, and kind of saying that, there's a way to overcome our present circumstances. We were speaking about the exploitation of natural resources, which is another thing that I think is a thing that as Africans we can recognize. So we created this world, this fantastical underwater kingdom where we see this underwater African village who have this natural resource that's part of their lives, and they had conflict with a land-based kingdom that's fighting over this stuff. And you replace Hatima, the resource, with gold or with copper or with cobalt. You replace the land and the water with just different people on the continent, or Europeans and South Africans or whatever, and it's just an everyday story. So the theme was around reconciliation and the ability for us to see each other as humans first, as opposed to as enemies and as obstacles, which is a difficult thing to do, but one that I think we have to strive for. Otherwise, like, what's the point? Like, where are we going with all of this? So I know it sounds heavy and all of that. The film is a little bit more fun than that, I hope.
It is fun. Okay, thank you. Lesego, can you tell us how like social media and influencer culture played into the story of You Give Me Heart?
Yeah, of course. It's everything. I'm sure you've seen the film. It's everything. And in the film, that's how you become a god. Like, you get the most followers, you become a god. And I was playing with the notions of self-validation. There's a lot of entitlement that we have now. There's a lot of instant gratification as opposed to delayed gratification. And it makes me feel old, like I'm part of the decades old generation, but I'm more for the delayed gratification than the instant gratification people. And that's where the idea for You Give Me Heart came from. And I've had my own struggles with social media, where I started creating art just to post. And the Lesego inside was like, well, what are you doing? This is not who you are. And I wrote a little story and kept it. So when I was invited to pitch, I pulled it out. I'm like, what about this? And they fell in love with it. And just working on the story was another monster by itself, because it was really unrefined. But to your question of influencers and social media, this is why I wanted Pearl Tusi, like the influencer. Now she's doing other things, to be the voice of Muddy, as you've seen, and actually got her. And it lended some authenticity to this, because I designed the character with her in mind. So when we got her, like, just be yourself, just be a lot. You are a lot, be a lot. And you know what I mean? And the part was really well tailored for her. Yeah.
So on that, like, a question for like all the directors. How did you decide on what like animation style you were going to use in your film?
Oof. Well, for me, it was always going to be a 2D. I'm a 2D guy, like, drawing is everything. But the specific technique of 2D that was used was not the idea that I had. And it actually worked in my favor, in the sense that I had to make sure that the story carries it. Because if it was about the technique, then I wasn't focusing on the story. So the fact that the technique was actually a simpler technique, I had to make sure that the story, the style of the film, like, if you pause it at anything, it could be a background for your computer. So I started focusing more on that. So it strengthened the story. So I didn't actually become so attached to the technique, because that way lies madness, if you're trying to make everything the way you want it to be. So yeah.
To Lesego's point, we also initially were going for a 2D look and feel. And then, because of the studios that we were paired with, we kind of moved to 3D and a 2D, 3D hybrid, and giving a 3D object a 2D look. And it was kind of where the magic of the film happened. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, we actually went the opposite way. I think we initially thought it was going to be CG, and then it became 2D, but we were very excited about that, because a lot of it, I think, boils down to the art style. In animation, you start with concept art, where it's just 2D illustrations of how you see the film looking. And my co-director, who was the main artist in our film, his style is very 2D friendly. When you look at it, it feels like you just want to see that exact thing just moving. So it was suggested to us, why don't you explore 2D? And as soon as it was suggested, we kind of fell in love with the idea very quickly, because I'm a big fan of 2D animation. It's not something you see very often anymore. And I'm hoping it's something that's going to make a comeback, because it's really, really, really beautiful. But yeah, I think that's how we ended up where we did.
So what do you want the audience to take away after watching the series, for everyone?
I think it's a personal thing for each audience member, right? I mean, I think there's 10 different films. I mean, we all kind of clubbed together in the fact that it's African and the fact that it's kind of got a sci-fi bend, but at the same time, it's 10 distinct films. So I think that each film is going to impact people in totally different ways. It's going to make them feel differently about, themselves and what they felt. So it's hard to say exactly like what the audience should take away. But at a big level, I think just it's almost like an introduction to the potential of African animation done at the scale to the world. So I think from an industry perspective, that's what I'm hoping, is that people are getting excited by like the kind of innovation, creativity, just realness that's coming out of the continent, and that more will follow. People will be like, okay, cool, this is actually a global product that people are just going to consume all over the world and enjoy the same way they like American films or anime or whatever. And we'll see the industry grow and grow more based on that.
Oh, me? Okay, well, I've got an answer. Because not all the directors come from animation, like with the Cats film, it's live action with quite a famous musician actually in Tato, Spook Matambo. So for my hope is that when people watch these and they start researching people, it will introduce them to a different culture, they really like Surf Sangoma, then they're like, wait, this guy's a musician, then they listen to his music, and it's a whole other rabbit hole of who we actually are, because when people meet us, we recently come from Annecy, when people meet us and Africa and what they see, there's a clash. They're like, Africa's not supposed to look like this or sound like this. We're like, well, we do, and we do, So yeah, I hope these films are going to do a lot more for the culture than just for animation.
Anyone else want to answer?
No, I think they got it covered. I don't think I need to. What they said.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll just say what Lesego just said. I think for me that's kind of the big one. It's to say, oh, look, there's this whole continent of people who they're just as into pop culture and movies and comics, and they're into the same things that I am, but they're coming at it with a unique perspective, that feels fresh and it feels new, and it's just a new energy, and I think we really need that in the world right now.
I asked on the theme of future and African futures, what do you hope to see in African animation going forward or in the future?
More of it.
Just more unbridled, more. Isaac has the best answer for this. just more different styles, because this is really just the beginning. It can only get better from here. It has to only get better from here. And for the young people, they finally have something to reference, because it's hard to tell like a student to make it more African if there's nothing you can point to. Now there is, there's some things you can point to now.
Yeah, and I think it's like, we just have to see what the continent has to say. I think that was the coolest thing about this, is that we were given the space, each of us, to say what we wanted to say, and you can see how different all the films are. And I think as the industry grows, we just need, my hope is that we will give the up and coming creators just space, and not overly package them before the African voice is a thing, because we are in an exploratory phase in our industry. When you think of anime, you think of a very specific thing. When you think of American animation, you think of a very specific thing. We don't really know what our thing is yet. All we can do is say, what's my thing as Isaac, and put it out onto the table, and every other creator on the continent does the same. And over time, people will kind of have a perspective to say, oh, that's what African animation wants to say, and this is the vibe, and this is the tone, and this is all of that kind of stuff will start to form. But I think it'll be bad for us to start trying to package things too quickly. Like just give people chances to just give their stories out into the world. It'll be better for the world because something new will come out of it, and it'll be better for us because it'll be true to who we are. So that's what I hope for all of this.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for everyone to see the films. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice to meet
you. We are too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.